Welcome to the SVG TV news for Tuesday, November 22nd. I am Khalil Kato with the details. The Customs Duties Amendment Bill was among 5 bills and 1 resolution passed in Parliament yesterday. The bill was tabled by Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez for an act to amend the Customs Duties Act to reduce certain duties and implement the common external tariffs based on the harmonized commodity description and coding system from January 1st, 2023. During his presentation of the bill, Minister Gonzalez says it is linked to the Excise Amendment Bill, which was also passed in Parliament yesterday, but with the inclusion of the promised reductions or adjustments to the customs duty regimes for automobiles.
This is an objective we've had from the beginning of the year, to reform and adjust how we charge for used cars in such a way as to reduce overall the taxation level on used cars, but in particular to incentivize the car purchaser towards newer cars and towards cars that have smaller engines. What we don't want is to have people buying big old cars but just saving money. So if you go to your bank and you borrow your X amount of dollars, we still want you to spend your X amount of dollars. We don't want you to spend less money, but we want you to spend that money on a vehicle that is newer and more fuel efficient, which will be better for you, the consumer, and better for the state, because if you buy a newer car, it's a few more years before you end up on the side of the road as old junk.
According to the Finance Minister, in the Customs Amendment Bill, they have established essentially 2 regimes, adjusted the excise and customs duty regime between now and the end of the year with corresponding charges that should be corresponding changes to the excise tax bill.
We wanted to give those consumers who have ordered a vehicle, whose vehicle is on the water, whose vehicle will get here before January 1st, an opportunity to enjoy the savings, because this is something we had promised in fiscal year 2022, as you will see in the budget address and as I just read. And the reason it had been delayed, manifold, but one of the reasons is that we were trying to implement a wholesale change to the formula by which we calculate the value of a car. And the customs officials were saying, why don't you wait until we implement HS 2022 before you change the formula? Well, if you do that, you wait until next year. And we wanted to, a lot of people order cars. When we look at how the orders of automobiles come in, a lot come in at the end of the year. So we wanted people to get at least some savings now, and then we'll explain the savings, the new formula going forward.
Minister Gonzalez says over the years, a range of private sector stakeholders and consumers have lobbied the Ministry of Finance for a review of the taxes levied on the importation of motor vehicles, and they have listened to these concerns, did internal analytical work, and are now addressing the issue. He explained the new adjusted rates for the different imported motor vehicles which importers will enjoy between now and the end of the year.
Currently, your motor vehicle is 35% excise, 35% import duty, 45% excise. That's what it currently is. Unless it's a small car, in which case it's 35-40. Now, the small cars, instead of being 35-40, will be 25-25. The large cars, the large automobiles, instead of being 35-45, will be 30-30. This is excise import duty. And your hybrids and electricals, instead of being 35-45, will be 20-20. Motor vehicles, next tariff heading, motor vehicles for the transport of goods. The construction sector is expected to grow by 10% in 2023. Hence, we are going to further incentivize the importation of trucks. So what we have done now, so we have the 5-ton going from 60 to 30, which already existed. There will be a reduction in excise tax for trucks exceeding 3.5 tons, but not exceeding 5 tons, by half, bringing the rate down from 60 to 30. So we're matching, before it was just on 5-ton trucks and above. Now essentially we're including the 4-ton trucks. We're going from 3.5 to 5, and we're bringing down the regime there as well.
On January 1st, 2023, the new formula, which will be used to calculate the value of the imported automobiles, will take effect. And Minister Gonzalez says this should result in a further reduction of the cost paid by most consumers, but not all.
When we have the new regime, if you buy a newer vehicle and if you buy a vehicle with a smaller engine, your savings will be even greater. If you buy a vehicle that is either old or has a massive engine or both, you will not enjoy the savings that somebody buying a small engine or a hybrid engine or a newer vehicle. Because you know what happens a lot of times? People go on, they go to the bank, the bank says you can borrow $25,000, which seems to be right around what the average landed cost of a vehicle in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is $27,000. And that hasn't really changed, even before the 12-year ban and after the 12-year ban. The banks tend to be lending about that much money when people go to get a vehicle. Before the 12-year ban, people were buying cars older than 12 years, but with a brand name, but older. After the 12-year ban, people started to buy 11-year-old cars, similarly with sometimes a little bit of name or something, but the amount of money that they spent landed didn't really change. They're getting $27,000, they're spending $27,000, and they're basically getting as much car as they feel they can afford for that $27,000. And what we're trying to do now is shift the needle, that you still take your $27,000, but instead of getting an 11-year-old car, you'll maybe be able to afford a 7 or 8-year-old car with the same amount of money. And to do that, we have adjusted the surtax regime to incentivize newer and smaller cars and to reduce the discretion of the customs officer at the port in how vehicles are valued.
In his contribution to the debate on the bill, opposition Senator Israel Bruce says even though he's lending his support to it, there are a few issues that must be addressed, noting that he cannot say in all fairness that the people of South Central Windward, where he contested the last general election on an NDP ticket, and by and large the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines will draw benefits from the amendments to the Customs Duties Act.
Within the framework of how does all of this help the people of the constituency of South Central Windward, because that's where my mind is. The farmers in that constituency, Madam Speaker, whilst the conversation is happening about getting them new model vehicles with smaller engine and creating a greater degree of affordability in that context, there is still the bothersome issue of the road network that they have to use to put these vehicles on. And they cannot operate in isolation one of the other. So if you're asking the people of South Central Windward and St. Vincent to expend their resources in new model vehicles, smaller engines, and benefit from fuel efficiency, but then you tell them, suffer the indignation of having to buy parts over and over and over again at a rate that is unsatisfactory, then the benefits that they see today will disappear tomorrow. So I say to my honorable friend, the Honorable Minister of Finance, as he looks forward towards Budget 2023, that one of the areas that I'd hope to see significant improvement in, Madam Speaker, is where the government will seek to ensure that the road networks across St. Vincent and the Grenadines will complement this measure that is being introduced by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Bruce says he also is in no position to say whether the initiative will result in revenue lost or gained for the government, as adjustments might have to be made.
You'd have to allow it to be tested and tried for a period of time, and then you do the assessment and decide all right, the government is making more money as a consequence, and we could reduce even further to take the burden of the taxpayers of this country. But if it results in revenue loss, you have to also say to the people that when we come back, there's a likelihood that we are going to up some figures to bring at least some semblance of leverage within the system. And
the opposition senator says there is a likelihood that with the introduction of the amendments to the laws, there could be a greater influx of vehicles into SVG. But consideration has to be given to the current parking situation in capital Kingstown.
So we have those that are here now. If properly maintained, they will remain. And based on what is offered in the legislation, Madam Speaker, we could have a number of persons deciding that, look, I am going to capitalize on this offer for the next 2 years. But what does that bring to the fore also? It brings to the fore, Madam Speaker, not what I consider to be the childish issue of where lawyers should park, but the overall issue of parking for vehicles in the city of Kingstown. If we are going to have more vehicles around, it would mean that we have to put in place the necessary preparation for more vehicles descending on capital city Kingstown, or alternative arrangements to balance out what we have currently descending upon Kingstown, and to put in place some other measure that will not create undue burden for persons who have their vehicles, don't wish to take taxis to get to work. We cannot just look at this piece of legislation in isolation of those attendant issues. And I expect between the Honourable Minister of Finance and the Honourable Minister of Works that there might be some discussions as to how we are going to resolve some of these very issues that are critical to this piece of legislation.
And a special sitting of Parliament is scheduled to take place on Monday, December 5th for Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, who will be here on a state visit. The announcement was made by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves in Parliament last evening. He said the Cuban president will be in the state from Saturday, December 3rd to December 5th.
So he'll be spending 2 days and a bit with us. And from here he will go on to Barbados to attend the 8th Cuba CARICOM Summit. I've spoken, Madam Speaker, as you know, honourable members, I've spoken to Madam Speaker about it. And what would happen on that day, as has happened when we have had heads of government speak to this Honourable House. The Speaker, of course, says, "Oh, welcome. I will speak for a particular period of time," and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, and then His Excellency the President of Cuba will also speak. There is a committee, Madam Speaker, involving state officials and the Cuban ambassador here, and the program is being finalized.
PM Gonsalves noted that this is the first time since the Cuban Revolution in 1955 that a Cuban head of state will be visiting St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The cleanup campaign in Kingstown, which includes orderly vending, is part of efforts by the government to have urban development in the city. On radio on Sunday, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said what has developed over the years in the city, despite regulations, is that too many persons are vending in a manner which is not reasonable, and they have to put some order to the situation. He noted that there are around 400 regular vendors who ply their trade 4 or 5 days a week and some on weekends, but the seasonal vendors have ballooned over the regular vendors, for who space has been provided for at 3 market facilities. The Prime Minister says the state has to regulate what needs to be done within the context of the law and address the issue with sensitivity and within the context of certain core principles for urban development. Street vendors have been already given notice that they have until Monday, November 28th to get off the streets and into the established market facilities. PM Gonzalez says government will provide for some 400 registered vendors who will occupy the new market facilities and the existing vegetable market a relocation allowance of $200.
Pay a cartman to take something. Some of them might drop they have to hire a pickup or something like that. Because we want in every way to assist them, to respect them, to ensure that they have a good livelihood, but it has to be done in an orderly manner and consistent with public health and the like. And I'm telling you the truth about this. Those who want to make political capital and play their petty politics, none of that moves me. None of that. We have to do what we consider to be right for the country as a whole, including the vendors, and for the city, and for the way our economy and our society evolving.
As part of the cleanup Kingstown campaign, the Prime Minister said they will also be dealing with vagrants and build structures to accommodate them. The Prime Minister said his government remains resolute to have proper urban development or a veritable urban revolution in capital Kingstown. Members of the media were taken on a tour of the building housing the National Insurance Services, the NIS, followed by a consultation looking at the services offered, including the pension plans. During the consultation, representative of the NIS, Valina Brown-Henry, shared details on how the NIS works and explained the different contributions that are being deducted from employees and self-employed persons, the different benefits being offered, including sickness, age pension, funeral, and more.
To an insured woman who is away from work as a result of pregnancy, and this benefit is paid up to a maximum of 13 weeks. We also have the sickness benefit. This is payable to insured persons who lose income due to illness over a maximum period of 26 weeks. That is, we pay the sickness benefit for a maximum of 26 weeks. In respect of employment injury, this is payable to insured persons as a result of any work-related accident or prescribed occupational diseases which renders him or her incapable of work. Persons are entitled to this benefit from the time they are duly employed. Just as an example, for previous other benefits, you have to have contributed for a certain number of weeks before you can be entitled to the benefit. But if you step onto the job the first day and you get injured, you are entitled to this benefit. In respect of long-term, we have the age pension, and the full age pension is paid to an insured person who is between the ages of 60 and 65 and who has paid or been credited with at least 500 contributions.
Marketing and Communications Officer at the NIS, Avir Charles, spoke about different ways in which the NIS lives up to its vision of being an institution that recognizes, assesses, and responds to changing environmental trends and provides sustainable social security to meet customers' needs. She says one of the ways in which they do so is through the mortgage finance program.
The NIS is involved in this mortgage finance program, and I'm not sure fans, how many of you know that we contribute to the loans that civil servants are able to access at the SVG? No. And why not? All right. So you see, 10 million was deposited at BOSVG, and this fund was established to provide mortgages to civil servants. So I'm happy that you're actually learning this morning with us, right? The mortgages, however, must be 100% financed, as in no contributions should be from the borrower. Why do we do this? We want to provide a vehicle for persons who own their own home without the burden of a significant deposit or equity contribution. Another in which we live our vision is under the health sector. In 2020, when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, one of the most important things that we noted was the need for an isolation facility, which St. Vincent and the Grenadines does not have. And as a social security system that is responsible or mandated or concerned with ensuring that we provide the best to our population, we decided to donate $750,000 towards the development of an isolation facility.
An estimated 40 residents of the communities north of the Rabaca Dry River are expected to be involved in a climate change workshop today, that should be tomorrow and Thursday, under the umbrella of the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, CYEN, and its Climate Justice Awareness Drive among indigenous communities. The Barbados-headquartered CYEN concludes that while the Caribbean region is most heavily impacted by the consequences of climate change, indigenous communities in this region are among the most vulnerable. A news release states that the 20-year-old network is therefore helping to build awareness among indigenous communities of the region to enable them to build resilience as they respond to the impacts and calamities of climate change. Dr. Andrew Simmons is the main consultant for the workshops, which will take place at the Seventh-day Adventist Church building in Sandy Bay. The two-day forum, which will bring together youth leaders, leaders from faith organizations, and other community influencers, is intended to build awareness on climate change stressors and calamities and identify actions which can be undertaken for adaptation and the building of resilience. It will also obtain information that can help shape projects for climate change adaptation and self-sustaining activities in these communities. The conclusions from the workshops are expected to be reproduced in a final report that will be part of deliberations at a CYEN week-long forum in Trinidad in early December. The participants are also expected to create 7 layers of climate risk maps, which will be incorporated in the local National Geographic Information Systems (GIS) database and will be available for use by government and agencies such as the National Emergency Management Organization (NEMO). The Sandy Bay Heritage Organization is hosting the workshop, which will run from 1 p.m. to 5:30 on Wednesday and that should be 10:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Thursday. After a 2-year absence, the National 9 Mornings activities will return this year in full with the official launching ceremony and parade around Kingstown on December 4th. This is according to the chairman of the National 9 Mornings Committee, Orandi Bomani Charles, during a recent interview on the API's Morning SVG program.
It's usually the first Sunday in December when we launch. Of course, we had to suspend over the last couple of years for obvious reasons, but we're back and we're trying to make it as big as possible, featuring most, if not all, of the traditional and contemporary elements of the festival around the parade and Heritage Square, where we turn on the lights for the season and kick it off on the 16th of December to the 25th, as you know, in Kingstown. And of course, all around St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in the major communities and some not so major communities, you will find 9 mornings or Christmas activities taking place, lighting up, serenading, all of the stuff that we know and love for this most unique Vincentian tradition.
Speaking on the lighting up competitions, Charles says that communities have already started registering, but he would like to see more participation this year.
Already began registering communities. Most of the groups have indicated that they are lighting up their communities this year. They are in the competition. They've already begun working. Last year we expanded some of the categories for lighting, particularly in the private home category. Prior to that, we used to have just about 1 private home in communities. Expanded that to 5. So it worked the last time, and we're encouraging more and more persons to just light up their homes in the communities. We're encouraging the businesses as well in Kingstown.
Charles said the 9 Nights of Lights at the Botanical Gardens is also back in full this year from December 15th to December 23rd.
Of the 9 Nights of Lights at the Botanical Gardens, and that keeps growing every year, and this year is definitely.
Why does it keep growing? What do you think so?
I think it provides an option for evening entertainment during Christmas. So it's a really
that's so the people can't wake up all day.
Yeah,
right.
And to be honest, it's a beautiful expression of lights at the Botanical Gardens, which is already
inherently beautiful, but when you string those lights, when you put those lights on, make those designs, it just comes alive in a different way, and persons are usually attracted to it. So I think it's a really good accessory to the Christmas festival. And we look forward to that as well. Full support to the team there at the Botanical Gardens, and we're inviting persons to immerse themselves in the full Christmas experience this year.